It is Wednesday, my dudes, and it is unfortunately the last time I'm going to be saying that to you guys in a Loki review video for this season. And there's gonna be spoilers right off the bat, so if you haven't seen it yet, don't spoil it for yourself because there's a lot we're gonna talk about today. First thing I want to talk about, and I just have to address because y'all know how much I love her, principally because she says, "Hey y'all," is Miss Minutes. Girl is a little sketchy. She's kind of a baddie. I kind of still love her. I won't make any apologies for Miss Minutes being one of my favorite characters from this season. She is like second in the list of who knows what's going on in this show. Second only to Kang, who we are introduced to in this episode. My man Jack, been predicting it for a while. You can go back and stream if you want to get an exact time and date he gave that theory. I was genuinely shocked that this happened because yes, the Jonathan Majors casting for Kang, who we knew was going to be in Ant-Man Quantumania, it did seem a little too soon for him to appear in the MCU, but I think it was almost the best diversion and such a great place for us to get to know his character for the first time. We got to spend pretty much the entire episode with him. None of this popping in at the last minute like Quicksilver in episode 5 of WandaVision. None of that business. We got to really get to know him, get to know his history, get to know where he may pop up in the MCU in the future. I think for characters like John Walker and Kang the Conqueror, they have these rich backstories, and going into the future of the MCU, they will really principally only be playing a certain role. US agent or Kang the Conqueror, not the guy at the end of the timeline, but a big bad or big bads, if you will, going into the multiverse. But what I really loved is that we got to spend time, get to know him. I think Jonathan Majors has already shown such control and such mastery of this character. He is verging on mad at certain times of his conversation. He's quirky, he's funny, he has this like lack of fear of death or his own mortality because he knows what will come into the future. Creating a villain who we have never been introduced to before and giving him massive control over future implications of the MCU, even though it really is a lot of exposition in this episode. I think Jonathan Majors did a fantastic job. This is his first time in the role, and I can't wait to see what the other variations of Kang do in the future because oh my gosh, did I love this character. He has that reason of saying a lot of bad things are gonna happen if I don't take on the role of dictator of the universe, and so it's got that slight Thanos edge where it's like, I don't agree with you, but I can kind of see where you're coming from. So I think this will create a really interesting dynamic going forward, and obviously that's the massive spoiler for this episode, is Kang and getting to see him and meet him and interact with him. And like many people have said, I think taking one of the most prevalent tricksters or flea on the dragon's back, as Kang refers to him, Loki, and having his series, his solo project, be the introduction to the next person that will be popping up in multiple different iterations of the MCU moving forward. I think this was the perfect baton pass of villainhood, of mischief from one villain to the next, and I just really appreciate everything the writers, showrunners, creators were able to do with this. Also, because most of this episode takes place during that interview style conversation, I really want to commend this entire show, but specifically the direction of the finale, for making really static scenes and static moments that are a lot of information feel extremely dynamic in the camera movements, the pushes into Kang as he makes different realizations or goes on different monologues about the multiverse. This episode did a great job of keeping it interesting, changing up the shot lengths, cutting sometimes from a push in and then a pull out to a push in and then straight cut to Loki and Sylvie. I think this episode did a really great job direction-wise by creating tension, by knowing there's this massive implications of these characters' decisions, but letting that be drawn out over making a simple choice between one thing and the other, and having two characters who we've been told all along are the same person try to make different arguments for their side of that choice. Also in this scene, the sound design. Because the camera itself moves so little throughout those scenes and conversations in Kang's Citadel, we really get a chance to focus on the sounds, the crackling of the fireplace, the almost motorcycle-like sound when the camera pushes in on Kang and he makes the realization that they've passed the threshold of what he knows about the timeline and the future of all timelines. This did such a good job by giving the audience time to really, really think through and process and digest a huge chunk of information that is going to be massively important for the future of the MCU, not rushing any of that, but also not dragging it out and making it really, really interesting to watch and kind of feel like you're in that Citadel room, office room with them. Obviously, I also have to talk about Sylvie and Loki. We get our kiss, but then we also get an immediate betrayal right after that, and I think this is perfect. I gotta say, I'm kind of on board with it now. I really was hesitant to say anything like that because it was the whole, like, they're the same person, blah, 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 blah. But the fact that the kiss comes at this moment when they've made this firm choice to kind of deviate in their thought process and their path and kind of separate their partnership that has been going on since episode 3 of trying to survive and get to the bottom of what's going on, creating that difference of opinion there in that choice that Kang offers them, either to rule the timeline or to kill him and face whatever may come to replace him. I think that was so smart. That teasing of their romantic relationship that's been going on for quite some time now really culminated well in this scene, and, you know, I just, kind of get it. Like, I'm kind of on board with it. A little reluctantly on board, but you know what I'm saying. And then maybe the single greatest line in this entire episode, which was full of fantastic lines, of fantastic delivery and performances by all the actors involved, was the "What division are you from" Mobius and Detective B-15 when Loki arrives back at the TVA. It's such a disorienting scene because we see that the timeline's going crazy. We're thinking multiverse, we're thinking Kang's dead. What's this implication for the future of the MCU? And then for us to realize that the central relationship of this entire series, Mobius and Loki, which has caused and sparked the changing of the timelines forever in the MCU and completely uprooted and burned to the ground what we knew of the TVA, realizing that Mobius does not recognize Loki, even though he's now aware of who he truly is himself, and then realizing that the next season of Loki is going to have to force our Loki to go through his TVA experience all over again. This was a very Handmaid's Tale type ending to me.
Hey guys, Sasha from editing. I didn't make this point very well, but what I'm trying to say is in Handmaid's Tale, if you haven't seen it, I'll try not to get into too many spoilers, but there's been a little bit of criticism or thoughts I've had as a fan of the show where the ending of each season seems to put us back at square one, just with new information that changes the way that our perspective of the world or of the characters and their struggles. For example, Gilead, where The Handmaid's Tale takes place, we see June/Offred, the main character, have to return to the world in different ways with new information or new challenges that, even though it could be seen as repetitive by not leaving Gilead and moving on to a new section of the world, but it gives us a new way to interpret the things that go on and makes tension in a world that's already well crafted and created, and not wasting that by just moving on to something else.
I feel like season 2 of Loki and the return to the TVA at the end of the episode and choosing to end the episode there was an incredibly smart choice because it allows other Marvel properties, namely Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness and likely Spider-Man No Way Home, gives them a chance to breathe into the multiverse, to explore a gap in time and kind of figure out what is going on and get to see those on the big screen, which I think is a really smart choice from Marvel. But it also lets us know that next season we're not plunged into the unknown. They haven't given themselves complete free reign over season 2 and where they can explore and just hopping around the timelines. I think this is a really interesting way to force the characters to deal with the repercussions of this season and kind of get to see more of Mobius, because I was a little scared we weren't going to see him even in this episode. Nonetheless, the future of the show kind of was scared he's going to, hop on a jet ski and just yeet out of there. Now we know he's going to be returning and we're going to get more of that Loki and Mobius connection, potentially with Sylvie again being an antagonistic force to Loki and their mission to fix the TVA and work with the facets of the multiverse that have never been explored. I knew I was gonna feel this way at the beginning of the show. I had my doubts around episode 3, but here I am, happy and proud to say this is my favorite of the MCU shows so far, and this finale I think did everything a Marvel finale needed to do. With the MCU going into television series, this is the show that needs to be kind of the blueprint for future. Now, I don't want every show to have this big of an impact on the movies. I really don't, because I don't want every show to feel like it has to lead into some movie somehow or give us information that we're going to need in a movie. I want to have shows like WandaVision that do really cool things with characters we already know and love and push the boundaries of genre and what the MCU is known for doing. But I really am excited for shows like Hawkeye, where we're going to get to see meaningful stories be told that are both contained within their certain season or series, but also can branch off, if you will, from that show's timeline into the rest of the MCU at large. That is a mouthful to say I loved this episode, I loved this season. What did you think? Where does this fall in your MCU television ranking? Did the finale leave you with more questions than answers? And do you kind of like that? Because I'm definitely on board for having more stuff to talk about in season 2. I think this was a fantastic television finale, and this series as a whole is just one I know I'm going to revisit a ton, not only just for the movies it's going to play into, but just for pure enjoyment. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you for sticking with me through all of my Loki videos and reviews. Do not forget, tonight is the last Loki Live that Jack and I will be doing over at the Fanatic Films channel. We are going to be talking about all of these things and more, and talking to you guys about your opinion, so you're not going to want to miss that. Have an absolutely mischievous Wednesday, and I will see you guys in my very next video. Bye, y'all.